The conference hall stretched for nearly a kilometer, its ceiling lost in artificial clouds that drifted past floating platforms. Ambassador Daniel Price sat in the human delegation's assigned seat, which was positioned near the back of the chamber, far from the central podium where the important species conducted their business. He had been attending these meetings for 6 months now, and each one reminded him of exactly where humanity stood in the galactic hierarchy. "The humans will not speak on this matter," announced Overseer Crathen, his forearms gesturing dismissively toward Daniel's section. "They lack the experience to contribute meaningfully to resource allocation discussions." Daniel felt his jaw tighten, but he remained silent. Getting angry would only prove their point. Humanity had joined the combined Galactic Assembly just 8 months ago, and they were still considered children playing at the adults' table. The assembly consisted of 17 advanced species who had maintained peace across the galaxy for over 2,000 years. They had rules for everything, especially for warfare and technology. No species could build weapons above Class 7 designation. No one could travel faster than light except through the approved jump gate network that the assembly controlled. No exceptions. The rules had kept the peace, the elder species claimed, and newcomers like humanity needed to learn their place. Chancellor Vexmora, the Silurian representative, spoke next. Her voice carried the metallic undertone common to her silicon-based species. "The probationary membership of Earth remains under review. Their military expenditures exceed recommended levels for a species of their development stage. We're just trying to defend ourselves," Daniel said quietly, knowing he would be ignored. He was right. The discussion moved on without acknowledging his comment. Captain Jake Sullivan would have said something stronger, Daniel thought. Jake commanded the USS Horizon, one of humanity's few ships allowed to operate in assembly space. The captain had no patience for political games, which was exactly why Daniel attended these meetings instead of him. The session continued for another 3 hours, covering trade disputes and mining rights. Daniel took notes, sent reports back to Earth, and wondered if humanity had made a mistake seeking membership in this bureaucratic machine. Then everything changed. The emergency alert shattered the usual monotony. Red lights pulsed through the chamber as a priority transmission override the proceedings. A Telvari delegate appeared on the massive central display, her face twisted in terror. "This is Homeworld Defense Station 7, she gasped. "We are under attack by unknown forces. They came from outside the galaxy. Our weapons have no effect. Please, we need immediate assistance." The feed showed chaos behind her. Explosions lit up the sky through the station's windows. Strange organic ships, black and writhing like living creatures, filled the space around the Telvari homeworld. The assembly delegates watched in stunned silence as the Dread Swarm, as they would later be called, tore through the Telvari defense fleet. "Deploy the response fleet immediately," commanded Overseer Crathen, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine concern. "Full Class 7 authorization." The assembly moved with impressive speed once the shock wore off. Within an hour, a combined fleet of 40 ships jumped through the gate network toward the Telvari system. Daniel watched the tactical feeds from the assembly's command center, where he had been grudgingly allowed to observe. Captain Jake Sullivan was already there. The Horizon had been conducting surveys near the Telvari region when the attack began. "Ambassador," Jake said, his weathered face grim on the communication screen. "I've never seen anything like this. These ships, they're alive somehow, and they're not following any tactical pattern we understand." The assembly fleet engaged the swarm 3 hours after the initial attack. Their Class 7 weapons lit up the darkness of space with impressive displays of energy. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids fired in coordinated volleys. Particle beams that had ended a dozen wars sliced through the void. Nothing worked. The swarm's ships absorbed the energy weapons. Their organic hulls rippled and adapted, becoming stronger with each hit. Daniel watched in horror as the alien vessels swarmed over the assembly's finest warships, tearing them apart with blade-like appendages and acid that ate through military-grade armor. "Pull back," ordered Admiral Tornek, the fleet commander. "Regroup at the outer planet and reassess." But there was no time to regroup. The swarm had already descended on the Telvari homeworld. From the Horizon's position at a safe distance, Jake and his crew watched the planet die. The organic ships landed on the surface and began consuming everything. Cities, forests, oceans, all of it was being harvested by the alien invaders. 48 hours after the first attack, the Telvari civilization was gone. 3 billion souls had been reduced to raw material for the swarm. The assembly fleet limped back through the jump gates, having lost 12 ships without inflicting meaningful damage on the enemy. Daniel sat in his quarters aboard the diplomatic station, reading Jake's official report. The captain had documented everything with brutal honesty. The assembly's weapons were useless. Their tactics were ineffective. Their response time, dependent on the jump gate network, was too slow. If the swarm attacked another world, the same thing would happen again. Earth's Space Command convened an emergency meeting within hours of receiving the report. General Linda Hayes appeared on Daniel's secure channel, her expression carved from stone. "Ambassador, we need you to buy us time. Don't let the assembly do anything rash regarding our military development." "What are you planning?" Daniel asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Something that will either save us all or get humanity expelled from the assembly," Linda said. "We have a prototype. It violates every treaty we signed. But after seeing what happened to the Talveri, I don't think we have a choice." In a hidden facility in Earth's asteroid belt, Dr. Paul Grant and engineer Katie Morrison stood before their creation. The ship was smaller than the assembly's dreadnoughts, but its design was radical. It didn't rely on the jump gate network. Its weapons operated on principles the assembly had declared impossible. Its power core generated energy at levels that galactic science said would tear the ship apart. "The Defiant is ready," Katie reported to General Hayes. "All systems are operational. We just need authorization to deploy." President Ellen Torres made the decision after consulting with her military advisors and reading the reports from the Talveri disaster. Humanity had been trying to play by the assembly's rules, trying to be good newcomers who followed the established order. But the Talveri had followed those rules too, and now they were extinct. "Deploy the Defiant," the president ordered, "and may God help us all." Commander Jack Bennett received his orders while training with the ship's crew of 300 volunteers. Every person aboard knew they were violating galactic law. Every one of them knew the assembly might declare war on humanity for this breach of treaty. And every single one of them stepped aboard anyway, because sometimes following the rules meant watching innocent people die, and humanity had never been very good at standing by while others suffered. The Defiant floated in the darkness of space, 300 kilometers from Earth's moon. Commander Jack Bennett walked through the corridors of his new ship, running his hands along walls that shouldn't exist according to galactic science. Everything about this vessel was wrong by assembly standards, which meant it might actually be right for fighting the swarm. First Officer Amy Rogers met him on the bridge, datapad in hand. "Final systems check is complete, Commander. The gravity drive is calibrated and ready. Katie Morrison says we can jump whenever you give the word." Jack nodded, looking at the main view screen where Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black. He wondered if he would ever see it again. "How's the crew handling the pressure?" "They know what we're doing is technically illegal," Amy replied. "But after what happened to the Talveri, nobody's having second thoughts. Chief Engineer Lucas Hayes has the power core running smoother than the simulations predicted. Weapons Officer Tyler Grant has been running combat drills nonstop. We're as ready as we'll ever be." The bridge crew sat at their stations checking systems that used human physics instead of the assembly's established science. Navigator Helen Price plotted courses that didn't require jump gates. Science Officer Chris Martin monitored sensors that worked on principles the aliens had dismissed as theoretical nonsense centuries ago. Jack took his command chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. "Attention all hands, this is the commander. In a few minutes, we're going to do something no human ship has ever done. We're going to fold space and jump across the galaxy without using the assembly's gate network. Our destination is the Talveri system, where the Dread Swarm is still harvesting what remains of that civilization. Our mission is simple, make them regret it." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The assembly will call us criminals for breaking their laws. They might even try to destroy us when we return. But I looked at the footage from the Talveri homeworld. I saw 3 billion people die because the assembly's approved weapons couldn't stop the swarm. So here's what I think. Sometimes you have to break bad rules to do good things." Bennett out. Lucas Hayes stood in engineering, surrounded by the pulsing blue glow of the fusion core that powered the Defiant. The assembly said such a reactor was impossible, that the containment fields would collapse and destroy the ship. Human engineers had proven them wrong. The core hummed with barely restrained power, enough energy to light up a small city. Initiating gravity drive, Helen announced from the bridge. Folding space in 3, 2, 1. The universe twisted. Every crew member felt it. A sensation like being stretched and compressed simultaneously. Reality bent around the Defiant as the gravity drive created a fold in space-time. The ship didn't move through space in the traditional sense. Instead, it brought its destination closer, then stepped across the gap. The jump lasted 17 seconds. When normal space reasserted itself, the Defiant hung above the ruins of the Tal'Vari homeworld, having crossed a distance that would have taken assembly ships 3 weeks through the jump gate network. All systems nominal, Amy reported, her voice slightly shaken. That was the strangest thing I've ever felt, but we made it. Sensors are picking up swarm activity on the planet's surface, Chris Martin announced. And we have multiple contacts in orbit. Looks like harvester ships collecting processed material. Jack studied the tactical display. 12 swarm vessels orbited the dead world, their organic hulls pulsing with sickening life. They hadn't detected the Defiant yet. The human ship was smaller than the assembly's warships, and its unique power signature didn't register on sensors designed to detect conventional drives. Tyler, weapon status? Jack asked. Weapons Officer Tyler Grant grinned like a wolf. Kinetic rail cannons are charged and ready. Directed energy arrays are online. Commander, I've been waiting my whole life to test these systems in actual combat. The rail cannons were humanity's answer to the swarm's adaptive shields. Instead of energy weapons that could be absorbed and analyzed, the Defiant fired solid metal slugs accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Pure kinetic energy that didn't care about fancy alien defenses. The directed energy arrays used focused particle beams that operated on different principles than assembly weapons. Take us in, Helen, Jack ordered. Combat approach. Let's make some noise. The Defiant accelerated toward the swarm vessels. The harvester ships finally detected the approaching warship and altered their formation. Information passed between them through some kind of biological network, coordinating their response. They had destroyed assembly fleets. One small human ship would be easy prey. They were wrong. Firing rail cannons, Tyler announced. The Defiant shuddered as magnetic coils launched projectiles at incredible speeds. The solid slugs crossed the distance in less than a second. The first swarm ship never had time to adapt. The kinetic round punched straight through its hull, creating a massive exit wound on the other side. Internal pressure explosively decompressed, tearing the organic vessel apart from within. It died without firing a shot. Target destroyed, Chris confirmed, his voice filled with amazement. The others are reacting. They're trying to swarm us. Let them come, Jack said calmly. Tyler, fire at will. Helen, evasive pattern delta. Keep us moving. The Defiant danced through space with an agility that would have impressed any assembly pilot. Its gravity drive allowed for impossible maneuvers, changing direction without the momentum problems that plagued conventional ships. The swarm vessels tried to surround the human warship, but it was like trying to catch smoke with your hands. Tyler fired again and again. Each rail cannon shot found its target. Swarm ships exploded or tumbled away, trailing frozen organic matter. The directed energy arrays cut through the alien vessels when they tried to close the distance, burning through their adaptive armor before they could adjust. In the engineering section, Lucas pushed the power core to its limits, feeding energy to weapons and drives simultaneously. Medical Officer Nina Foster stood ready in the medical bay, but no casualties came. The swarm couldn't land a hit on the impossibly fast human ship. 8 minutes after the battle began, 12 swarm vessels were debris. The Defiant hadn't taken a single hit. The crew sat in stunned silence, hardly believing what they had accomplished. The assembly's combined fleet had been devastated by the swarm. One human ship had just eliminated a dozen of them without breaking a sweat. Scan for survivors on the planet, Jack ordered, forcing himself to focus. Any Tal'Vari who made it through the initial attack? Negative, Chris reported sadly. The swarm was thorough. But, Commander, I'm detecting a massive energy signature deeper in the system. It's big. Really big. Before Jack could respond, the priority communication channel activated. Ambassador Daniel Price appeared on the screen, his face pale. Commander Bennett, what have you done? The entire assembly just watched your battle. Someone was monitoring the Tal'Vari system remotely. They saw everything. Then they saw us succeed where they failed, Jack replied. They saw you violate every technology treaty we signed, Daniel said. Overseer Krathen is demanding humanity surrender the Defiant immediately. Chancellor Vexmora is calling for sanctions. Jack, they're terrified of you. A human ship just destroyed swarm vessels that shrugged off their best weapons. They don't see a savior. They see a threat. Amy looked at Jack with concern, but the commander's expression remained steady. Ambassador, patch me through to the assembly. All of them. I want everyone to hear this. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. A moment later, Jack's image was being broadcast to the assembly's council chamber, where delegates from 17 species watched with a mixture of fear and anger. Members of the assembly, Jack began. I'm Commander Jack Bennett of the human warship Defiant. Yes, we broke your laws. Yes, our technology exceeds your approved classifications. But 3 billion Telvari are dead because your rules mattered more than their lives. We're not going to surrender this ship. We're not going to apologize for saving ourselves. And we're not going to stand by while the swarm destroys more civilizations. Overseer Krathen's voice boomed through the communication system. You have 72 hours to surrender that vessel, or Earth will face the full weight of assembly sanctions. Do what you have to do, Jack replied. We'll do the same. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. They looked back at him with determination rather than fear. They had proven something today. Humanity didn't need permission to defend itself. Sometimes the impossible just needed someone brave enough to attempt it. Set course for the next swarm sighting, Jack ordered. If the assembly won't protect the innocent, we will. The Defiant jumped through folded space for the 5th time in 3 weeks, emerging near a small mining colony on the edge of assembly territory. Commander Jack Bennett stood on the bridge, studying the tactical display with tired eyes. His crew had been fighting nonstop, racing from one swarm attack to another, always arriving just in time to make a difference. Colony status? He asked. Science Officer Chris Martin worked his console, analyzing the sensor data. Population of 40,000. Mixed species, mostly miners and their families. Swarm ships are approaching from the outer system. We have maybe 30 minutes before they arrive. 30 minutes. It was never enough time to evacuate, but it was enough time to fight. Jack had learned that the swarm followed patterns. They scouted systems, identified valuable resources, then sent harvester fleets to collect everything. The pattern was predictable once you understood it. How many ships? First Officer Amy Rogers asked. 23 contacts, Chris replied. Bigger force than we've faced before. They're learning to send more ships when they detect defensive activity. Jack nodded slowly. The swarm was adapting to humanity's interference. Each battle taught them something new about the Defiant's capabilities. The easy victories of those first few engagements were behind them. Now the fights were harder, longer, bloodier. Battle stations, Jack ordered. Same drill as before. Tyler, focus on the harvester ships first. If we can take out their collection capability, they might retreat. Weapons Officer Tyler Grant prepared his systems, but his earlier enthusiasm had been tempered by experience. Commander, I'm seeing some new ship configurations in that fleet. Larger than the harvesters. Could be war forms. Chief Engineer Lucas Hayes reported from engineering. Power core is running hot, Commander. We've been pushing it hard. I can give you full combat power for maybe 45 minutes before we need to cool down. Make it work, Lucas, Jack replied. Those colonists down there don't care about our power limitations. The Defiant moved to intercept the swarm fleet. Jack had learned to use the ship's superior speed and maneuverability as weapons themselves. Hit fast, hit hard, then reposition before the enemy could coordinate a response. It had worked perfectly until now. The battle began like the others. Rail cannon rounds tore through the first wave of swarm ships, the kinetic projectiles punching fatal holes in organic hulls. Directed energy arrays burned through adaptive armor, exploiting the brief moment before the swarm's biology could adjust to the new threat. Then everything changed. The larger warforms released a pulse of energy that made the Defiant's sensors go haywire. Navigator Helen Price struggled to maintain position as the tactical display dissolved into static and false readings. They're jamming us, Chris shouted over the alarms. Some kind of quantum entanglement disruption. I've never seen anything like this, Tyler fired blindly, relying on backup targeting systems that were never meant for combat use. Some shots connected, but others missed entirely. The swarm fleet pressed their advantage, closing the distance while the Defiant flew half-blind. Hull breach on Deck 7, Amy reported, her voice tight with stress. Emergency bulkheads are sealing, but we have casualties. Jack felt his stomach drop. The Defiant had taken damage before, minor hits that the crew could repair. But casualties were different. Those were people, friends, crew members who had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. Medical Officer Nina Foster's voice came through the communication system. Medical team responding to Deck 7. Multiple injuries. I need damage control teams to secure that section. Lucas worked frantically in engineering, rerouting power to compensate for the damaged sections. Commander, the breach isn't critical, but we're losing atmosphere. And the power core temperature is climbing faster than predicted. These war forms are forcing us to use more energy than the standard swarm ships. Jack made a decision. Helen, emergency jump. Get us out of here. We'll regroup and come back with a new approach. The Defiant folded space and vanished, leaving the swarm fleet behind. The human ship emerged 2 light years away, systems sparking and crew members rushing to contain the damage. In the medical bay, Nina worked over 7 injured crew members. 3 had minor wounds, 4 were critical. By the time the damage reports came in, the mining colony had been destroyed. 40,000 souls harvested by the swarm while the Defiant ran to save itself. Jack sat in his quarters staring at the casualty list. 7 names would recover, but the colonists wouldn't. He had failed them. A message arrived from Scholar Fenry, a Talveri who had survived the destruction of her homeworld. She had been on an off-world research station when the swarm attacked, and she had been studying them ever since. Commander Bennett, I may have information that can help. The swarm is not random. They have a purpose, a destination. May I come aboard? 2 days later, Scholar Fenry stood in the Defiance conference room, her scaled hands manipulating a holographic display. The swarm is moving in a specific pattern, not just harvesting randomly, but following a deliberate path through the galaxy. They're heading toward the Assembly's core worlds. Ambassador Daniel Price joined the meeting via secure communication from the Assembly station. The Council still wants you to surrender the Defiant, Jack. But there's a split forming. Some of the younger species see you as heroes. Others think you're making things worse by provoking the swarm. We're not provoking them, Jack said firmly. They were already coming. We're just the only ones actually fighting back. Another voice joined the conversation, heavily encrypted. This is Captain Velkos of the Silurian Navy. I am contacting you in secret, Commander Bennett. The Assembly's official fleet movements are being monitored by the swarm somehow, but I can provide you with advance warning of where they'll strike next. My government would call this treason, but I believe the real treason is watching civilizations die because we're too proud to accept help. Amy looked at Jack with surprise. An Assembly captain was willing to betray his own government to help humanity's illegal warship. It showed how desperate the situation had become. Over the following weeks, the Defiant continued its lonely war. With Fenry's intelligence and Velkos's fleet information, they arrived ahead of swarm attacks more often. They saved colonies on the Outer Rim, protected refugee convoys, and bought time for evacuations when they couldn't win outright battles. The crew became famous across the frontier worlds. Stories spread about the impossible human warship that appeared when all hope seemed lost. Captain Jake Sullivan of the Horizon reported that civilian ships were painting human flags on their hulls, claiming Earth's protection, even though no formal treaty existed. But the victories came with costs. The Defiant's hull bore scars from a dozen battles. The crew had lost 19 people to swarm attacks. Lucas kept the ship running through improvisation and sheer determination, but even he admitted the power core was being pushed beyond its design limits. Then long-range sensors detected something that made everyone's blood run cold. Chris Martin brought the data to Jack's quarters at 0300 hours, unable to wait until morning. Commander, you need to see this. The swarm superhive. We finally found it. The holographic display showed a structure the size of Earth's moon, organic and pulsing with sickening life. Millions of swarm ships surrounded it like insects around a hive, and it was moving directly toward Siluros Prime, the capital world of the Assembly, home to 12 billion souls and the seat of galactic government. When will it arrive? Jack asked. 3 weeks, Chris replied. Maybe less if it accelerates. Jack studied the massive hive, calculating impossible odds. The Defiant alone couldn't stop something that size. The Assembly fleet had already proven their weapons were useless against swarm technology. In 3 weeks, the galactic capital would fall, and the Assembly would collapse. Unless humanity did something insane. Jack contacted General Linda Hayes on Earth through the quantum communication system. General, I need you to do something that will either save the galaxy or destroy humanity's reputation forever. I need you to share our technology with the Assembly. There was a long silence. Sharing the Defiant's secrets meant giving up humanity's only advantage. It meant trusting species that had treated them with contempt. It meant risking that someone would use human weapons against Earth itself. Why? Linda finally asked. Because 12 billion people are going to die otherwise, Jack said simply. And because proving we're better than the Assembly means actually being better. Not just having better weapons. The Assembly Council chamber had never been so chaotic. Delegates from 17 species shouted at each other, while Ambassador Daniel Price stood at the human podium, waiting for order to be restored. He had just delivered humanity's offer to share the Defiant's technology with any species willing to fight the swarm. The response was exactly what he expected. Pandemonium. Overseer Crathen slammed his forearms against his console. This is a trick. The humans want to make us dependent on their illegal technology. Once we accept, they will control us all. Chancellor Vex Mora spoke with cold calculation. Or perhaps they recognize that their single ship cannot stop the superhive. They need our manufacturing capacity and resources. This is desperation, not generosity. A smaller delegate representing the peaceful Meridian species stood and spoke quietly. My colony was saved by the Defiant 3 weeks ago. Commander Bennett could have demanded payment or political concessions. Instead, he asked only that we evacuate safely. I do not believe humans are trying to trick us. Daniel seized the moment. Members of the Assembly, in 3 weeks the swarm's superhive will reach Siluros Prime. Your own military reports confirm this. The combined Assembly fleet failed to stop a smaller swarm force at the Talveri homeworld. What makes you think you can stop the superhive without help? The chamber fell silent as the truth of his words sank in. President Ellen Torres appeared on the main display, broadcast from Earth. The Assembly has rules about technology, about warfare, about how civilization should behave. Those rules kept peace for 2,000 years. But the swarm doesn't care about your rules. It only understands strength. Humanity is offering our strength freely, with no conditions except one. Fight together or die separately. Scholar Fenry, who had been granted permission to address the council, added her voice. I watched my entire civilization consumed by the swarm while assembly ships retreated. The Defiant arrived too late to save my world, but they tried. They are still trying. Every day, they risk themselves for people who call them criminals. How many of you can say the same? The debate continued for 18 hours. Species aligned along old rivalries and alliances. Some saw opportunity in humanity's offer. Others saw only danger in accepting weapons they didn't fully understand. The vote was called 3 times and failed each time to reach the required majority. Then Captain Velkos did something unprecedented. He appeared in the chamber without authorization, his Silurian military uniform marking him as active duty. I am committing treason by being here, he announced. I have been secretly assisting the Defiant, providing them with assembly fleet movements. I did this because I swore an oath to protect the innocent, not to protect bureaucratic pride. He turned to face Chancellor Vex Mora directly. Chancellor, the superhive is heading for our homeworld. Siluros Prime, your world, my world. Do you really care more about maintaining technological superiority than saving 12 billion Silurians? Vex Mora's crystalline face revealed no emotion, but her voice carried weight when she spoke. Captain Velkos, you will face court-martial for your actions. But you are also correct. I vote to accept humanity's offer. The dam broke. One by one, species that had been opposed changed their votes. Not all of them, not even most, but enough. The measure passed with 73% approval. Humanity would share its technology with the Assembly to build a fleet capable of stopping the superhive. 3 weeks to build warships that took humanity years to develop. It was impossible. Dr. Paul Grant and Katie Morrison arrived at Siluros Prime with 500 human engineers and scientists. They were met by thousands of alien specialists, many of whom still viewed humans with suspicion. The cultural barriers were immediate and overwhelming. Katie found herself in a Vexian shipyard, trying to explain gravity drive principles to engineers who thought in completely different mathematical frameworks. No, you can't use harmonic resonance for the field containment. It has to be quantum locked. The Vexian chief engineer Krathtek crossed his forearms dismissively. Impossible. Quantum locking at that scale violates energy conservation. It doesn't violate it, it redirects it, Katie insisted. Look, just let me show you. She spent 6 hours working alongside Kraftech, building a small-scale model of the gravity drive. When it successfully folded space across the laboratory, the Vexian engineer stared in amazement. "Your species thinks sideways," he said slowly. "You ignore rules we consider fundamental and somehow make it work." "We're good at impossible things," Katie replied with a tired smile. Similar scenes played out across multiple worlds. Chief Engineer Lucas Hayes worked with Silurian metallurgists to build fusion cores that wouldn't tear themselves apart. They approached the problem from opposite directions, humans thinking in terms of containment and Silurians thinking in terms of channeling. Together, they created something better than either species could have managed alone. Weapons Officer Tyler Grant trained alien tactical officers in the use of kinetic weapons and directed energy arrays. Many of them resented taking lessons from a human, especially one so young. Tyler handled it by letting the weapons speak for themselves. After watching rail cannons punch through targets that energy weapons couldn't scratch, the skeptics became students. Medical Officer Nina Foster established the first integrated medical facility. Combining human and alien medical knowledge, she learned that Vexian biology responded differently to trauma, that Silurian tissue regenerated in ways human tissue didn't, that each species had unique strengths. By sharing knowledge, they saved lives that would have been lost treating patients with only single-species medical understanding. Commander Jack Bennett worked closely with Assembly Admiral Tornik, planning the defense of Siluros Prime. The admiral had fought in a dozen wars and commanded fleets for 30 years. He initially viewed Bennett as an upstart child playing soldier. That changed during their third strategy session. "You're proposing we abandon the outer defense perimeter entirely?" Tornik asked in disbelief. "It's a trap," Jack explained. "The swarm wants us to spread out to defend multiple positions. Then they can overwhelm each group individually. Instead, we concentrate everything at Siluros Prime. One massive fleet. One decisive battle." Tornik studied the human commander with new respect. "You understand that if we fail, there's no fallback position. The capital falls, the assembly falls with it. If we spread out and fail piecemeal, the same thing happens, just slower and more painful." Jack replied. "At least this way we go down fighting together." The old admiral nodded slowly. "You know, Bennett, when this started I thought humans were reckless and arrogant. I was half right. You are reckless. But it's not arrogance. It's confidence born from doing impossible things so often you forget they're supposed to be impossible." One by one, the new warships took shape. They weren't identical to the Defiant. Each species adapted human innovations to their own strengths and building traditions. The Vexian dreadnought Unbreakable combined human gravitational shielding with Vexian metallurgy to create armor that was both incredibly strong and incredibly light. The Silurian cruiser Starfire integrated human weapons with advanced Silurian sensor arrays that could track targets through quantum interference. 12 species contributed vessels to what became known as the Unity fleet. The construction schedule was brutal. Engineers worked in shifts around the clock. Katie Morrison went 4 days without sleep before Lucas Hayes physically dragged her to a rest facility. Mistakes were made, corrected, and learned from. Slowly, impossibly, the fleet came together. Scholar Fenry worked in the Defiance Science Lab, analyzing every piece of swarm data they had collected. First Officer Amy Rogers assisted her, combining human and Telvari knowledge to look for weaknesses in the superhive's structure. "There," Fenry said, highlighting a section of their analysis. "The superhive has a central coordination nexus. It controls all the individual swarm vessels through some form of biological networking. If we can destroy the nexus, the entire attack force should fall into disarray." "Should?" Amy asked. "Nothing about the swarm is certain," Fenry admitted. "But it's our best chance. The problem is reaching the nexus. It's inside the hive, protected by organic armor 10 kilometers thick." Amy studied the data, her mind working through tactical problems. "We'd need a ship fast enough to penetrate the defenses, tough enough to survive the journey, and powerful enough to destroy the nexus once inside." Both women looked at each other, thinking the same thing. Only one ship in the galaxy fit those requirements. 3 weeks after the assembly vote, the Unity fleet assembled at Siluros Prime. 43 warships, representing the first true cooperation between species in assembly history. They were crewed by mixed teams, humans working alongside aliens who had been strangers weeks before. Commander Bennett broadcast a message to the combined fleet. 3 weeks ago, most of you had never worked with a human. Some of you probably still don't trust us completely. That's okay. Trust is earned through action, not words. Today, we face an enemy that wants to consume everything we love. Our homes, our families, our futures. The swarm thinks we're weak because we follow rules. Because we value life, because we hesitate to destroy. They're wrong. Our values make us strong, and together we're going to prove it. The superhive dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Siluro system, like a moon made of nightmares. Commander Jack Bennett watched it appear on the Defiance view screen and felt his stomach tighten. All the battles, all the preparations, all the impossible achievements of the past weeks came down to this moment. Size confirmation, Science Officer Chris Martin announced, his voice steady despite the fear everyone felt. The hive is 3,000 kilometers in diameter, escorted by approximately 15,000 swarm vessels of various configurations. Commander, those numbers aren't in our favor. Admiral Tornek's voice came through the fleet communication channel. All ships maintain formation. Do not engage until the swarm commits to their attack vector. We fight together or not at all. The Unity fleet hung in space between the superhive and Siluros Prime. 43 ships against 15,000. Jack knew the math didn't work, but math had never stopped humanity before. First Officer Amy Rogers moved through the bridge, checking each station, offering quiet words of encouragement to crew members who were facing their first real battle. Chief Engineer Lucas Hayes reported from engineering. Power core is at optimal levels, Commander. All systems are green. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The swarm didn't hesitate. Thousands of attack ships launched from the superhive, forming clouds so dense they blocked out the stars. The organic vessels moved with coordinated precision, dividing into assault wings that targeted different sections of the Unity fleet. Here they come, Weapons Officer Tyler Grant said. Multiple attack vectors. They're trying to surround us. All ships weapons free, Admiral Tornek ordered. Make every shot count. The Unity fleet opened fire. Human kinetic weapons combined with alien energy arrays in a devastating display. The first wave of swarm ships died by the hundreds, torn apart by weapons they couldn't adapt to fast enough. The Vexian dreadnought Unbreakable lived up to its name, absorbing hits that would have destroyed lesser ships while its massive cannons cleared entire sections of space. But for every swarm ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The enemy pressed forward with suicidal determination, accepting horrific losses to close the distance. A group of swarm vessels overwhelmed a smaller assembly cruiser, tearing it apart despite the desperate covering fire from nearby ships. We're losing the Meridian Light, Amy reported, her voice tight. Hull breaches across all sections. They're abandoning ship. Jack watched escape pods eject from the dying cruiser. The Unity fleet's screening ships moved to protect the lifeboats, but 3 pods were destroyed before they could reach safety. He forced himself to focus. Grieving would come later if there was a later. Navigator Helen Price kept the Defiant moving, using its superior speed to reinforce weak points in the fleet formation. The ship's gravity drive allowed for maneuvers that saved dozens of ships from being overwhelmed. But the swarm was learning, adapting their tactics to account for the Defiant's unique capabilities. Lucas pushed the power core harder than ever before, feeding energy to weapons, shields, and drives simultaneously. Commander, we're running hot. Core temperature is climbing into the red zone. We can maintain this output for maybe 30 minutes before we risk catastrophic failure. Keep it together, Lucas, Jack replied. We just need to last long enough. The Vexian dreadnought Unbreakable moved to block a concentrated swarm assault aimed at the Silurian flagship. The massive ship took devastating damage, its armor scarred and breached in dozens of places. But it held the line, buying time for the smaller vessels to regroup. Then Scholar Fenry's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Commander Bennett, I've analyzed the swarm's attack pattern. The superhive is directing everything from the rear. If we can destroy the central nexus inside the hive, all these ships should lose coordination. I know, Jack said quietly. Amy, prepare to transfer command to Admiral Tornek. Amy looked at him sharply. Sir? The Defiant is the only ship fast enough to reach the hive's core and tough enough to survive the journey, Jack explained. We're going in. That's a suicide run, Amy protested. The hive's organic armor is 10 kilometers thick. Even if we penetrate it, we'll never make it back out. Jack met her eyes. I know, which is why I'm giving you and the essential crew 15 seconds to get to the escape pods. Anyone who wants to leave, go now. No judgment, no shame. This isn't an order I can give. Nobody moved. Medical Officer Nina Foster spoke from the medical bay. With respect, Commander, shut up and fly the ship. We're not going anywhere, Lucas added from engineering. We've come this far together. Seems wrong to split up now. Tyler just loaded every weapon the Defiant had, including the experimental Nova torpedo that Dr. Paul Grant had warned might tear a hole in space itself. Ready when you are, Commander. Jack felt something catch in his throat. These people, his crew, had become more than fellow soldiers. They were family, and they were willing to die together to save billions of strangers. Admiral Tornik, the Defiant, is making a run at the superhive, Jack announced. We're going for the central nexus. Keep the swarm off our backs as long as you can. Understood, Commander Bennett, the Admiral replied. It has been an honor serving with you. The fleet will give you the opening you need. The Unity fleet changed formation, concentrating fire to create a corridor through the swarm vessels. The Vexian dreadnought Unbreakable, already heavily damaged, accelerated ahead of the formation. Its captain's voice came through one final time. For those who cannot fight for themselves, for those we've lost, for tomorrow. The Unbreakable plowed into the swarm's densest concentration, firing every weapon until the very end. The massive ship finally succumbed to the overwhelming assault, exploding in a brilliant flash that vaporized hundreds of swarm vessels. The sacrifice created the opening the Defiant needed. Full power to drives, Jack ordered. Helen, take us in. Straight line maximum speed. Don't slow down for anything. The Defiant accelerated, the gravity drive pushing the ship faster than any vessel in the fleet. Swarm ships tried to intercept, but the human warship was too quick, too agile. It threaded through the enemy formation like a needle through cloth. The superhive loomed ahead, a mountain of organic matter pulsing with alien life. The outer surface crawled with defensive organisms that launched themselves at the approaching ship. Helen flew through the hellstorm while Tyler's weapons cleared a path, burning through biological defenses that grew back almost as fast as they were destroyed. 30 seconds to outer hull, Helen announced. Brace for impact, Amy ordered. The Defiant hit the hive's organic armor at tremendous speed. The ship shuddered violently as it punched through layer after layer of living tissue. The view screen showed a nightmare tunnel of writhing biological matter trying to crush the intrusion. Lucas rerouted all available power to forward shields while the ship burrowed deeper into the hive like a bullet through flesh. Hull integrity at 60%, Amy reported. We're losing structural stability. Keep going, Jack said. We're committed now. The Defiant carved through the hive's defenses, leaving a trail of destruction behind it. The ship's armor screamed under the stress, hull plates buckling and tearing. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as systems failed one by one. Finally, they broke through into a massive internal chamber. The central nexus pulsed in the center of the cavity, a biological computer the size of a skyscraper coordinating the entire swarm fleet. Millions of organic connections linked it to every swarm vessel in the system. Target locked, Tyler announced. Arming the Nova torpedo. Fire, Jack ordered. The experimental weapon launched, crossing the chamber in less than a second. It penetrated the Nexus's outer membrane and detonated deep inside its core. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Energy cascaded through the biological network, overloading every connection simultaneously. Get us out of here, Jack shouted. Helen reversed thrust, but the Defiant's engines were damaged, producing only a fraction of their normal power. The ship limped toward the exit tunnel while the hive convulsed around them. Biological matter collapsed inward as the Nexus died, threatening to crush the human vessel. Lucas performed miracles in engineering, coaxing power from systems that should have failed minutes ago. The ship crawled through the collapsing tunnel, armor grinding against crushing organic walls. They were moving too slowly. They wouldn't make it. Then the Silurian cruiser Starfire appeared at the tunnel entrance, firing into the hive structure to widen the opening. We've got you, Defiant, the Silurian captain transmitted. Just a little further. The Defiant burst from the superhive like a cork from a bottle, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. The ship had barely cleared the hive when the entire structure began to tear itself apart. The Nova torpedo's detonation had started a chain reaction that the organic vessel couldn't contain. Throughout the Siluros system, every swarm ship suddenly went dark. The biological network connecting them to the superhive had been severed. The vessels drifted aimlessly, Their coordination destroyed, their purpose lost. The Unity fleet needed no orders. They fell upon the disabled swarm vessels, eliminating them methodically. The battle that had seemed impossible to win was suddenly shockingly over.